So yeah, for today, Austin and Borja gonna introduce Ethereum and as well EIPs, the most used EIPs inside the Ethereum ecosystem. All good for you, Austin.
All right, here we go. GM. I think it's like evening for some people, and it looks like we have like a worldwide contingent here looking at all the GMs in the chat. It's really cool. Usually, when I do these talks, it's like 80 to 90% dudes. So this is very new for me. I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to see all these fresh faces. I think it's best if you have any questions, definitely just drop them into the chat. Uh, Also, let me just give my contact information to make sure there's just like space for any questions that you don't feel comfortable asking here. I'm Austin Griffith on Telegram also. I do lots of developer education, leading people to building on Ethereum, not just like how to build, but what kinds of things are interesting to build. So Lane, it sounds like you said also some EIPs. Am I doing half and someone else is doing half, or is that all me and you want me to do some EIPs also?
No, so Borja from Ethereum Cat Erdl will do it.
Perfect. Okay. So should I go for like maybe like 30 minutes or something like that? Is that what we're thinking of? Perfect. Okay, awesome. So I think the key thing that I can give today is just showing you how to tinker around with Solidity and how to get started building on Ethereum. It's really interesting because developer work is changing. With AI, it's getting easier and easier to just like prompt cursor for what you want to do rather than writing all the code. Even me, someone who's been writing code for 20 years, I'm writing less and less and less code. So I think that should give you an idea that like you don't have to be like a super nerd that can write like hella code to be able to build something that's interesting that people will use. And we're getting closer and closer to the point where it's more about thinking algorithmically and kind of prompting and trying things rather than getting in there and banging out a bunch of code. So totally open, drop questions here, unmute and ask questions. Lots of open space here. Hit me up if you have questions. What I'm going to show is just tinkering around with Solidity and how to kind of get started thinking about building on Ethereum. And I'll just share the screen here and let's get started. There we go. Okay. So I run, I help, I lead. I don't know what I do. I work on the Build Guild though, and we are like an organization, a DAO, uh, focused on developer onboarding and developer growth in Ethereum, teaching people how to build on Ethereum and being that like first step place you can start to get going. And what we'll be focusing on a lot today is Scaffold-ETH, which is kind of like an app building toolkit. It's almost like it's a very opinionated hackathon stack, I think is the best way to think of it. If you want to build something in like an hour and have a website that someone can go to and use your thing, this is a really good way. It's also very opinionated, so you might build a few things with it and then eventually start with like your own fresh stack where you want to customize it a little bit more. But this is going to make some decisions for you ahead of time just to make things really easy to get to the point where you can deploy and build things. We're going to dive into that in a little bit. There's docs there for Scaffold-ETH. I might just paste that into the chat also if I can figure it out. Yes, here we go. Boom, there's the docs. Uh, and here is the Scaffold-ETH website. Let's get that too. And that's where we'll start. And we'll write very little code, but just a little code dinking around here with some Solidity. Let's go ahead and get started with that. And by the way, your homework for for tonight will be doing speedrun Ethereum and just the very first challenge. So you'll go mint a little buffalo and a little zebra NFT, and you'll send them around from burner wallet to burner wallet. And that will make a little bit more sense as I get into Scaffold-ETH and tinker around with some burner wallets. So I'm watching for chats. If you have questions, feel free to just post them there. But I'm just gonna kind of keep tinkering along here. I'm going to start with you can clone down the repo. It is a repo that you can just fork, but there's also this kind of one line that you can run. And let me bring up a command line and let's get started. Let's go to the command line, get really nerdy here. Let me zoom in here so we can see it. Okay. Hopefully everyone has that there. And I'm just going to do npx create ETH. So I'm just going to kind of copy this command right here and just hit enter. And it's going to bring down a lot of stuff for me. Let's just say this is the H.E.R example or something like that, right? And I can use Hard Hat or Foundry. In the ecosystem, more people like Foundry than Hard Hat because Foundry is for running tests in Solidity. So if you're like super nerdy code and you have like all these really big tests that run in Solidity, then you might want to use Foundry. I think Hard Hat is a little easier for deploying and a little bit better for some orchestration stuff. So it kind of depends on what you know. Either of these are good. And with Scaffold-ETH, it's going to be the same command no matter what. You're going to do a yarn deploy, a yarn chain, a yarn start, and those same commands will work whether you have Foundry or Hard Hat. But we'll let this install for a second and then we'll get started. Usually I use Visual Studio Code, but more and more every day I'm moving more toward Cursor. So I might as well just launch this with Cursor in case we want to use any AI. But if you haven't heard of Cursor yet, definitely go check it out. It's sort of like a way to write code, but also kind of have GPT AI like integrated into your process. So you can kind of prompt it and it will start like editing your files for you. It's really cool. Okay, so when we start this up, it wants us to run a few commands. It kind of feels like you're launching a rocket here, but we're going to go into the example, and then I'm going to run yarn chain, and that's going to spin up a local blockchain. So now we have like our own little blockchain running, and it has a bunch of accounts that have a bunch of ETH in them. So we're able to kind of tinker around locally without having to spend real money. And then there's a yarn deploy, which will run here. Oops, I need to CD into her DAO. And then yarn deploy. And that will deploy our example smart contract to our blockchain. And then we'll do yarn start. So those are kind of the three main commands, the yarn chain, yarn deploy, and yarn start. And I'll just keep yarn start right here, and I'll keep yarn chain right here. And that's sort of like my front end and my back end. And we can open up that front end also, and we'll have a little kind of browser. And this is what Scaffold-ETH is about. It's about building kind of consumer applications, something that a website that someone can go to, they can connect their wallet, they can interact with your smart contracts. And that's what Scaffold-ETH is about from the beginning here. So let's dive in. Any questions yet? Any questions? Sorry, I haven't. Share the GitHub repo link. Yes. So the repo link is this one right here, I think. The Git clone link, I think that is what was asked for. It's that right there. Yeah, and some props for Cursor. Yes, some supporters of Cursor for sure. It's really awesome. So speaking of Cursor, let's go ahead and bring that up too. So we have kind of our code over here with Cursor, and I'll try to zoom in, but I've got like, let's see, can I shrink this a little bit? There we go. So I have our Next.js, which will be our front end, and our hard hat, which will be our smart contracts. And it comes with an example smart contract. And try not to get too overwhelmed. There's a big old smart contract in here with lots of stuff, but we'll get in there and tinker with that in a little bit.
I
But
see.
what this creates, yep, go ahead, please.
Yeah, someone asked to go more slowly.
Oh, slow. Yeah, for sure. Um, that's hard. That's hard to do. I will try. I will try.
And I'm not
So,
sure people
yep.
know what is yarn, for example, and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah. So that yarn command that we're using is an npm replacement. So npm is a package manager. So all of these things are using Node.js. Let's do that. Let's do some Googling. So Node.js is like a runtime environment. It's you can write some code and it will run it. And the nice thing about Node.js is you write some JavaScript and it's both your front end and your back end. And if you have objects that are passed between the two, it's really nice to have the same language for everything. In this case, we have Solidity as our kind of back end language and Node.js as our front end language. Or you could even think of it as like front end, back end, and blockchain as kind of three different layers there. But yes, Node.js is sort of the language. JavaScript is kind of the language we're writing. Node.js is kind of the runtime environment. And then npm is a package manager for Node.js. and Yarn is just an example, drop-in of npm. So yeah, it's just a package manager that helps you like run things. What we have here is what's called a mono repo, where we have multiple different repos inside of one GitHub repo. And so that's why we use Yarn, because Yarn helps us orchestrate a bunch of commands. You just have to run, you know, Yarn chain and it brings up the back end, and you run Yarn start and it brings up the front end. And that let's see, there's some and that will bring up your stack. And in if you go to Speedrun Ethereum, where where the homework is, and you follow along with the steps right here. So speedrunethereum.com, I'll paste that in here too. This will go slower. So even though I might go a little fast here and maybe like not all 100 people can keep up, you can always just go to Speedrun Ethereum and click this quest button and follow these instructions. And they'll be very like line for line. Here's exactly what you do. It kind of explains everything. So even if I go a little bit too fast here, I'm going to paste this link in right here, and this will be like a very slow step by step. So I'll go a little bit speed run here, and I'll go a little bit fast just to show you kind of give you a taste of all the parts, and then we can kind of you can zoom in and go slowly on your own time with that link that I posted there. And hopefully that covers that, but also still stop me, hit me up if you have questions. I'm happy to answer them along the way. So Scaffold-ETH comes up with this like front end right here, and we have a wallet connection over here, and we're using burner wallets. We'll learn about burner wallets today. Burner wallets are instead of a MetaMask, here, let me show what a MetaMask might look like, right? We could connect our MetaMask and do all this stuff and have all these pop-ups, right? And it even switched us over to the right network. And then when I go to make a transaction, it's going to pop MetaMask up. And it's going to be really annoying if I need to do like lots of transactions. And sometimes when you use MetaMask on localhost, it has all these chain ID problems. So we're not going to use MetaMask when we're working locally. We'll disconnect that and we'll just use a burner wallet. And these are generated automatically when you open up the page. So if I just open up like a new incognito window and I go to
Quite,
localhost 3000.
I
Yep.
quite
Question?
Bekleyeyim mi?
Uh-oh.
Acele etme.
Is there a question?
I don't think
I
so.
think it was like an accidental. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So so we have this burner wallet here. So notice how this guy is kind of like this pink and teal dude, and this one's like this green guy. If I close this and open it again and go to localhost, we'll get a totally new wallet. There we go. Then it's blue. So this is really handy for testing and trying things out. You can open up an incognito window and have a brand new wallet. You can grab funds from the faucet, then you can send stuff around. You can try things. Maybe you have something in your smart contract that says only the owner can do this. Then it's really easy to try it as the owner and then try it as a second account and see that it works as the owner and it doesn't work as another account. So that's where burner wallets are really handy. You can have a burner wallet in each different browser and kind of make your transactions that way, and you don't have the MetaMask pop-ups and some of those other things. But then when you deploy to production, you probably won't use burner wallets. You'll probably use, the normal, connect your wallet and sign things with MetaMask. So the coolest part of Scaffold-ETH is this debug tab right here. When you hit debug tab, someone said burner wallet. It's not exactly like burnerwallet.io. Burnerwallet.io is like an old burner wallet of mine. An even better one would be Punk Wallet. You can go to punkwallet.io. You can select any network. I think Base is a big sponsor. You could go to Base and you could trade DGen token with punkwallet.io. And this is also a burner wallet. If you open up punkwallet.io in an incognito window, you'll just get a random account, right? And then we can just grab that random account and I don't know, should we send some base to it? How much money do I have? Let's send like 10 cents just for fun. So when you copy this address and you paste it in, you see that the punk kind of comes along with it. And this background, this pink background is kind of the background. So it gives you this nice little like you can see exactly who you're sending to, right? And then if I want to send like, 10 cents or something, 25 cents and hit send, I just sent real money without like MetaMask pop-ups or any of that kind of stuff, right? And we look over here now, this character has 25 cents. So that's a punk wallet. You were talking about burner wallets. I'm kind of talking about burner wallets, kind of lowercase b burner wallets, like a generic term of burner wallets. That's what we have kind of popping up over here in Scaffold-ETH on localhost. That's what these are. But then like uppercase burner wallets, if you're thinking of like the product, I would say that like burnerwallet.io is kind of like an old website of mine, and Punk Wallet is probably the best burner wallet, capital B, to use. But lowercase b will have these burner wallets. Okay, to go to the coolest part. The coolest part of Scaffold-ETH is right in here. It's this debug tab. When you click debug, you get this really cool view that shows you the read and write functions on your smart contract. So as you add things to your smart contract, you get an automatic UI that shows up here. Okay, so I think someone's asking about the Etherscan API. I'm not sure. You'll have to figure that out. But a lot of the API keys are actually built into Scaffold-ETH, and you need to like take my API key out and put your own in. But let's get to this really like the heart of Scaffold-ETH, the most important part. And so I have my smart contract over here. It's in packages, hard hat contracts. And it has a bunch of stuff in it. Let me zoom in a little bit more. There's a lot of stuff here. And there it's here for a reason. Like we're showing you a bunch of stuff here, but it helps you like really if you're a coder, you can kind of just like look at this and get a feel for how this works and what primitive data types you have available. There's a function. This is a classic greeter contract where you set a greeting and it's stored on chain. And there's some extra stuff here where it looks like the function is payable. And if you send in money, there's some premium flag, right? There's some premium flag that sets to true if you send in money, which is just kind of like a nice little feature here. And then some withdraw function. But we'll dink around here. But what I really want to show is that first of all, you can interact with your contract. So I can say hello world here. And when I hit send, I'm going to get an error. And that's just because every single transaction costs money, right? Even when we're on our own local chain, you have to pay a little money. And that's how the chain works. That's how it stays secure. So you have to, first thing you have to do is notice that your burner wallet doesn't have any funds. You can click this button and now we have like $2,000. And now we can go here and say hello world. And when we set this, we should see the greeting change over here. So I should click this. There it is. There. So now the greeting is hello world, right? Hello HER Send, right? So we can set the greeting. So this is kind of like the basic first interaction where you can write a quick message and send a transaction to the smart contract. Was there
Austin,
something there? Yeah.
could you explain how the your repo the order of repo explain all about front end where we can find the contracts, etc. Just to make
Yep.
sure people have an
Yep.
overview of a repo.
Yeah, for sure. So it's a mono repo, and there's these two kind of packages here. Like this is what the code looks like, but your packages directory is where you're going, and you've got Hard Hat or Foundry, and then you've got Next.js. And so within your Hard Hat and Foundry is where you can find your contracts. So packages, Hard Hat, contracts is where I'm getting the contracts. And we'll get to the front end in a little bit, but we're not quite there yet. But your front end is in Next.js and then app and then page JSX. And we'll basically edit just those two files. We'll edit the contract and we'll edit the front end. And so it's, hard hat contracts your contract and Next.js app page. Those are the two files that we're going to edit today. But I want to get to this part here where we have this smart contract at your contract and we want to add something to it and we want to tinker around with it. Okay. So the way we would go about doing that is let's do a uint 256 public let's just call this like some count, right? Some count. And we'll set it equal to 0. So we're just going to make a really, really, really simple counter. But that should set some count to 0. And then if we go ahead and deploy our contract with yarn deploy, and then we look at it on the front end, there's going to be this new, so there is, I guess there's already a total counter, but here's some count. So here is that counter that we created. Let's see, checking in on the questions. Yeah, I don't know about the Etherscan API key. I'm not sure how to answer that question. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna edit this contract and we're gonna show how we can make a change to the smart contract and we can tinker with it with the front end. So one really great way to learn Solidity syntax is Solidity by example. And if you're an okay programmer, you could just kind of like look through these and get it pretty quickly. If not, you may want to go a little slower, go through them, and you can take on kind of each one of these concepts one at a time. But let's just pick out one of these concepts. So a mapping is kind of a tricky concept. But what happens is it maps some address to some number. So if we were to just copy paste this over, right? Now, so we're keeping track of some count, and now we're keeping track of for any given address, there's a count. So instead of creating just that counter, it could be like counter per person, right? So the way a mapping works is it's mapping some address to some number in this case. So for any given address, there's going to be a number. And let's do a function that says increment my counter, right? So it's only going to increment the one for the address that's logged in. And look at that, the AI is nice enough to help us with this. So what it does is it is going to take this number that's going to start at 0 and it's going to increment it, and I'm each different address, each person who interacts with this will get their own counter. That's how that mapping works. So we've created a mapping where any person can keep track of a count, and then a function that lets people increment their counter. Let me just save that and we'll deploy it, and let's go tinker with it. And that's really the dev loop you want to get in with Scaffold-ETH is you kind of pick out some concept you want to go learn, you put it into your smart contract, you deploy it, and then you come over here and you kind of tinker with it. So now we have this A counter per person, and it takes in an address and it gives us back a number. Okay, so my counter for this pink dude right here is 0. But then I have an increment my counter button. And if I hit that a couple times, 1, 2, 3, and then I go back and I read my count, it's at 3. Okay, it's working, right? And that's kind of like this critical loop you want to get in when you're kind of tinkering with Scaffold-ETH, you're tinkering with Solidity, you're trying to figure out what exactly you want to build or how to build it. This is really the loop you want to get in, is have Scaffold-ETH pulled down locally, and similar to Remix, as someone noted there, it kind of gives you that code, compile, and tinker kind of loop. And you pull down Scaffold-ETH, you go to Solidity by example, and you can kind of pick out any of these concepts. Let's pick out another concept. I mean, if else. That's the like a basic programming. If 10 is less than 0, you return. If x is less than 10, you return 0. If x is less than 20, you return 1, else return 2. And so an if function, if you wanted to write it into your code, you could just copy this and paste it and tinker around with it here. What I might use to tinker around with an if statement is this right here. In our set greeting function, it's payable. And if you pay some, it flips that premium tag to true, right? Let's just go tinker around with that real quick. So if we go back to here, and we look at our contract. Whenever I set the greeting, right, hello world, something like that, and I hit send, we see it, the greeting show up here. But let's send in some money. And if we send in some money, it should flip this premium flag to true, and we should see it here if our if statement works correctly, right? And here's another little weird thing about building on Ethereum is that when you send your value in, it needs to be in Wei and not in ETH because smart contracts don't use floating point math. So we use this little trick where we multiply the number, even if it's a decimal, by 10 to the 10 to the 18. And so you get this really big number, but really this represents a decimal value. And the smart contracts don't want to mess around with floating point, like the little decimal. So we do this fake thing where we multiply by 10 to the 18 on the way in and divide by 10 to the 18 on the way out. And it gives us a decimal-like thing to deal with. But the smart contracts don't want to deal with that. And look at that, it worked. We made a transaction. We set the greeting. Let's hello her DAO. Let's make it better. And we paid some money, and the premium flag is now true, and our smart contract now holds $5, right? We were able to pay money and set this and flip that premium tag thanks to this if statement, right? Just showing off an if statement in the Solidity. So this is really like the base kind of loop you want to get into. Go grab Scaffold-ETH off the shelf, either clone it or npx run it. You'll need yarn and git and node, and I think that's listed there. And then you are off to the races. You can add things to your smart contract. You can tinker with them here. Let's even like use some AI real quick. I think that might be kind of fun. Let's say let's bring in some AI and say let's add a decrement function that minus are a counter per person, something like that. Like subtracts. Let's make this not code. Subtracts from our a counter per person, something like that, right? And what this is going to do is be like, oh, hey, you want to write some code? I got a decrement function for you. Here you go. And in this case, it's doing a require statement, which is kind of weird. It doesn't need to do that, but I think it just doesn't know exactly how Solidity works. We don't really need that there, but it kind of wrote the function for us, right? And then we can go deploy that. And then we should have now like a decrement function over here too. So if I were to check my current count, it's going to be 0. Then if I increment it a few times and then check it, and then if I decrement it once, it should go down to 2. There we go. Okay, so we have like a working smart contract. You would spend some more time now working on your front end and building it out, and I'll show that next. But let me pause here just to see what the questions are. Yes, I think this is recorded. Yes, I'm using AI. I'm using Cursor. So it's this app right here, Cursor. So it kind of feels like Visual Studio, but I can prompt it over here and it can add some things over here. Yes, and all the resources are shared. Awesome. Okay. So any questions so far with like, we're kind of into the weeds here. We're really tinkering with Solidity, but what I want to do is just kind of like give you the the feeling that you have the confidence that you can get in here and tinker with Solidity without too much of a headache. You kind of go grab Scaffold-ETH, you run those commands, and then as you add things into this smart contract, it allows you to go work on it in the front end. Pausing here to see if there's any other questions, and then maybe we'll build a little front end too. Yep, uploading recordings. Okay, so a counter is really kind of a lame thing. I would love to build something more here, and you can use the AI to do all sorts of really fun stuff here. I will probably just stick with a simple counter, but of course, building a counter on chain is not very useful. You really want to build like an app that people might use. Good examples of that right now are things like Poly Market, where it's a prediction market. There's all sorts of like DeSci stuff happening. Games like Dark Forest, the game, where it was basically it's something that you can only build on chain. You needed ZK snarks, you needed blockchain, you needed a handful of different technologies to make this work. And for the first time with all these technologies together, we can play some of these cool games. Another one is like flash loans. That's something that you never could do before Ethereum, right? But a flash loan allows you to like take out a loan and pay it back all in one atomic transaction or in one block of transactions, which is really cool, really fun. So you're really trying to find like And this is definitely a needle to thread, but like what kind of consumer crypto app can I build that uses blockchain uniquely or is uniquely Ethereum or on-chain? And this is a hard question to answer, and it's kind of up to you. And it really starts here, where you're tinkering with Solidity, you're kind of figuring out how you want this thing to work. Maybe you want to build a prediction market. So you probably should go look at Gnosis conditional tokens and be like, all right, how does a conditional token work? And maybe like find, I don't know, some contracts you could bring into Scaffold-ETH to dink around with. I was I was kind of hoping that I would like click in here and see some Solidity and it would make sense, but it's not yet. Let me see if I can find. Yeah, there's hashing collection. I don't really see. Yeah, set up a prediction market in 30 minutes. That's awesome. Cool. So let's see if we get a prediction market, like the code for it. This is kind of like truffle. This is kind of old. Mm, no, not great. We could copy paste some of this stuff in here, but it's pretty old. Looks like they're using okay, there's a factory there. What is this? Can we
Someone
grab that code? Yeah, go ahead.
get a question about Cursor AI. You
Building side by side, that question? I don't know if I even understand what that
no,
means.
just above.
Different one. I think I missed the question. I see
Uh,
something about uploading recordings.
yeah, it's a question for Cursor. Do you need to select the specific file to get the modification in the code file, or Cursor could change beyond the selected code file as well?
Oh, okay. This is a cursor question. Do you need to select a specific file in the code? Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, this was a cursor question. So, yeah, you kind of have to. So it's context is kind of based on what file you're in, but you can add other files. So, for instance, I'm adding my contract and my front end page here. And so now I could prompt something like add an event to the smart contract and then list the events in the front end, and it would be able to tell me like, okay, you're going to need to edit this file, and then you're going to need to edit that file. And then also you can do this other trick where you command enter and it will look at your whole code base. So I could say something like, maybe I get rid of this, and I say, how do I display a balance in Scaffold-ETH? Is there a component? And then I'm going to hit Command Enter or Open Apple Enter, and that is going to search all of the files in my whole code base, and it's going to try to find how to display a balance. Yeah, it's funny that like this is turning into a cursor talk, which is great. That's totally fine. Uh, Cursor is a great new technology, and I would recommend it in terms of building things quickly. Let's see if this is able to figure out how to make a balance. No, not exact. Oh, here it is. Yeah, balance. You use a balance component. Yeah, so it's telling you here's how you make a balance. You import that balance, and then you bring in your balance component, and it will show it there. Yeah, so Cursor is definitely something you should check out. There's probably way better videos than I can make out there. So yeah, go check out Cursor. Let's get in here though. Let's see. So we've kind of there's kind of some multiple phases. Yeah, I definitely have Sepolia ETH too. If you need Sepolia, send me a Twitter DM or a Telegram message with your address and say you need some Sepolia, and I will send you some Sepolia. Where's that burner wallet? Here, watch this. I bet I have a ton of Sepolia. Yeah. Yeah. This is a burner wallet. So there's a private key and local storage holding 9,000 Sepolia right there. So I have plenty of Sepolia. Just send me addresses and I can send some Sepolia out to folks. Okay, so the different phases here. There's sort of this phase where we're tinkering with Solidity and we're trying to figure out what we want to build. And in that phase, is we bring down Scaffold-ETH from scaffold-eth.io. We look at solidity by example. We pick out the concepts we want to try. Maybe we want to try to make something that uses structs this time. Looks like a to-do list, right? So we paste those things in here and then we deploy them. And then we get the app up over here and we tinker with that. So this is kind of like phase one of building something. You sort of like get your solidity right. And then phase two is sort of, okay, let's pretend like we have this awesome smart contract and it's tested and it's awesome. Basically, all it is it keeps track of a counter for each person and lets them increment it and decrement it. And there's really no use for that, but it's a good example of a smart contract. And let's say it's working pretty well and we like the way it works when we debug it. And now we want to work on that front end. We want to do some Next.js work, right? Now, a lot of this I use AI for also, but what we're going to do is we're going to write some React here. So I went back to my home link. Notice we've been mostly working in the debug contracts. I'm going to go back to my home link here, and I'm going to start writing some React here. So we've been in hard hat most of the time. Now I'm going to move to Next.js over to this page.tsx. Okay. And at first, I'm just going to clean some stuff out of here, probably delete a lot of stuff. I like the connected address, like showing the connected address is really nice. And then maybe we could give this like a title, like per DAO example, and it's just a counter connected address. We'll delete a bunch of this other stuff. And we'll have a nice clean page to start with. Let's see, how does that look? There we go. So there is our example app. And then over here we can kind of edit it, right? So by the way, first thing, this address component, let's show what this looks like without the address component. So if we just in kind of plain text display this connected address, it looks really gross, right? If you were trying to write an app and you needed to represent everyone as this big thing, it's really, really ugly. So this shows where the components that you get out of the box with Scaffold-ETH are really useful. What I can do is just say, let's wrap this connected address in this address component. And now you get this nice pretty view where you get a blocky and an ENS avatar if they have one. And when they click this, it takes them to a block explorer, whether that's the local block explorer or once you deploy to base or something like that, it would be base scan. And you can copy and paste it by clicking it. Just a really nice little component there. And we have these for lots of things, like for instance, the balance, right? We were just talking about balance. What is the balance of the connected address? Looks like I need to import that. But now with that dropped in, now we have balance, right? And I can click that and I can switch it between USD and ETH. So just these handy, nice little components. Okay, but let's write some code. And honestly, I'm probably going to have the AI write most of my code for me. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it how to do it. So I'm going to go to Scaffold-ETH. I'm going to go to interacting with your contracts and I'm going to copy this location. I'm going to say, here's how you read from a contract. Here's how you write from a contract. So let's get a new chat going. So here is how you read from a contract. And we're just going to tell the AI how to do it. I could write this stuff in React pretty quickly, and I've done it a million times. And you can too by just following these docs right here. But I think a robot nerd can do it even better than we can. So let's use that. Here is how you write to contracts. Okay. And we'll have this and a button. Okay. So now what we want to do is we want to display what's that called? The count, whatever we have over here, whatever this variable is, the A counter per person. Display the A counter per person for the connected address. And this would be read from the contract. And then we want to provide two buttons that write to the contract and call increment and decrement. And I'm also going to attach the, let's see, we want to do this in the page.tsx, but I'm going to attach the your contract just in case it needs it. Okay, here we go. Let's just see what happens. We're just going to let the AI build the app for us. Writing the React is the hardest part. Please work. Let's find out how Claude does with this. So yeah, it looks like it's going to give us some code. It does a use scaffold read to read the counter value. Then it's going to set up that writer. And here's a handler for handling the increment. It's going to call write your contract and call this increment function. Watch this. Oh no, let me actually wait. I'll show that off in a second. Okay, it looks like it's got our code for us. So I'm going to hit this apply button. Here we go. Here's the cursor, back to the cursor tutorial, and then I accept it, and then I hit save, and then we go look at our front end and hope. Look at this, look at this. It may have just worked. Okay, so it looks like our counter value is 0. And if I hit increment, what happens? It actually makes a transaction. And let's see if the counter, oh, the counter increments. Look at that. It totally built our front end for us by just prompting it and giving it some guidelines about how to do things. Let's see if the decrement button, look at that, a fully functioning user interface without ever having to write any React. That's really nice. Kind of cleaning up some stuff here to make this code look better. Looks like it's doesn't need those args. Doesn't need those args. Okay, here was the really cool thing I wanted to show is if the AI isn't writing it for you and you're in here trying to handle how you want to write to your smart contract, Scaffold-ETH is really good. Oh gosh, what did I do? How do I get out of here? I've done something. There we go. Scaffold-ETH is really good at knowing about your contracts in the first place. So what you can do is you get to this point right here, and as soon as I open up the quotes, watch this. It gives me some hints, and it's saying, here are the 4 functions that I know that your smart contract has. Which of these 4 functions would you like to call? And as soon as I click that, it just fills it in. So there's lots of levels here of getting help. You could totally just prompt cursor and hope that it just gets it right. But also, as you're writing your code, it's going to give you lots of good suggestions on how to make that code work. And so this is, one way to do this is just lean up against Scaffold-ETH helping you out with tab completion and stuff like that. So the finalize to finish up here, you can increment and decrement your silly counter if you want. It's just a silly counter on chain. How you would finish this out, right? How you would put this out into the world so someone can see it. What you would do is you're going to need to deploy it, right? And when we deploy a smart contract, am I okay on time? Can I go for 5 more minutes? Is that okay, Celine? Hopefully we're not too.
Yes, it's okay. It's okay.
Okay. Okay, cool. Let's deploy this thing.
Just
Let's
just
put. Yeah, go
go
ahead.
more slowly because some people are just lost. Um, because
For sure. Yes. Yeah,
because
I'm sorry. I wanted to.
like I
Yeah, go
said,
ahead.
some of them don't have set up in yet their environment, so that's why.
Yeah, sorry I went so fast. Like it's kind of like I want to cover enough to give you a big picture view of it. I know that like I've been going fast enough that's kind of hard to follow along with each detail, but I promise you, if you go follow, just go to Speedrun Ethereum and go to that first challenge, it's going to walk through all of this stuff line by line. And if that still isn't good enough, I'm at Austin Griffith on Twitter and at Austin Griffith on Telegram. I'm just going to paste it in again, just in case. DMs are open everywhere. So if you have a question, just send me a question and I can help answer it. There's also like a Scaffold-ETH Telegram. So if you're stuck trying to get dependencies installed or having issues there, totally just ask questions there. So sorry for running a little fast here. Just trying to get kind of end to end. What I want to do is have something that's sort of deployed at the end and show you kind of how it looks like as a skeleton, and then you can kind of fill in the details as you go. So the last piece is getting this thing deployed. Let's pretend like now we've tinkered around with our smart contract for a long time and we figured out we built this really cool secure counter for some reason. And then there's this page that's our view of this counter, and the AI helped us build this thing. So now to put this out there, will Yarn generate? And this is in the docs. But what happens here is we're going to create an account, and this account is going to be our deployer account. Okay, so I need to send some funds to this account. Let's go back to that Punk wallet again, and let's go on Base, and let's send, I don't know, I think you need like not very much money. Let's send 25 cents to our deployer. So this is our deployer account, CD77, okay? And now I'm going to try to deploy a smart contract live on Base. I'm going to pull this out though. I don't want any console logging anymore. There's no reason to put that on chain. So just clean that up real quick. Let me see if there's any other console logs. Nope. Okay, good. Just had to clean up this little like scaffolding piece of our smart contract before I put it out there, just so I'm not polluting the chain. All right, here we go. Yarn deploy. Now, when I hit yarn deploy, it's just going to deploy it locally. Yarn deploy just deploys locally. But if I do yarn deploy dash dash network and then any network I want, since Base is the big sponsor here, I'm going to deploy this live to Base. So I'm about to put a real smart contract onto a real network, and it's going to be completely live and available for anybody to use. And I put 25 cents into my deployer account. So this is quite cheap if it goes through. Now we're just, boom, there it is. We just did it. We just deployed a live contract. Let's go see how much it costs. So once our contract is live, if we go look at our app, it's still saying hard hat and it doesn't know where our contract is. You have to make one more change to Scaffold-ETH in the scaffold config. And this is in the docs. You'll find it as you go through this stuff. You'll get to this point where you set your chain to Sepolia, I think. But right here, I'm just going to change this to Base. And now the whole app is going to change to Base. Watch this. It's going to just reload. There we go. Now it's going to ask us to connect our wallet. If we're on the wrong network, it'll bump us over. It's saying, hey, you're on hard hat. Don't you want to be on Base? Yes, I do. And there we go. Now I'm logged in as AustinGriffith.eth. It's got my nice ENS avatar preview. I can go home here. I can see my balance. I can see my counter value, and I can actually like make a transaction. Here we go. Here we go. Look at that. It pops up. What's it going to cost me to increment like fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a cent? And hopefully now I just made an on-chain transaction and incremented my counter for some reason. So that contract is now live on Base. And if I click on this, I can go see it on Base scan. So there's the contract I deployed right there. And you can tinker with it again here. Like we could also increment our counter here if you're in your debug tab. But really, we were able to tinker with a smart contract, have AI build a front end for us, and then deploy the whole thing. Uh, the Etherscan API key is nice because you can do things like verify your contract. I noticed this verify isn't done automatically for me. I need to verify and publish my contract. If you put the base scan API key into Scaffold-ETH, it will do that automatically. But I don't think, let's see, yarn verify network. I don't think this will work out of the box. I think you have to have an Etherscan API. Yeah, I think so. Something like that. Or maybe it's the whole network. Not sure. But yeah, that's where that Etherscan API is handy, but you really don't need that out of the box. Yeah, Scaffold-ETH is a replacement for Truffle and Remix, even though both are great. I would move from Truffle to Hard Hat or Foundry, and Remix is good. It's just a little overcomplicated and weird, and there's a lot of stuff going on there. But you can bring up Scaffold-ETH, and also it may be weird and have lots of things going on there. And this is just like developer opinion, but I think Scaffold-ETH is a lot cleaner, and it sets you up for deploying an app live and having more of a front end that you build out. So last thing we might want to do is put this app live. You'll notice we're still on localhost with our app. If you want to deploy your app somewhere and then set up like a domain pointing at it, maybe this could be like mycoolcounter.com or something, mycoolonchaincounter.com. what you would have to do is do a yarn Vercel, and Vercel will upload your app. And I just have this YOLO prod setting that just is like, don't check types, don't do anything safe, just deploy it, and just make it happen. And so if I deploy this, this will eventually end up with a URL that I can go to and share with my friends. And that's basically the demo. That's where you can get started tinkering with Scaffold-ETH. Sorry I went so quick through it, but you can do this on your own time. Just go to scaffold.eth.io, run one of these commands, then use Solidity by example to kind of wander through these different concepts, copy pasting them across, and then using this debug page in Scaffold-ETH to kind of tinker with things. And then eventually, when you get everything working the way you like, you can move over and build a nice little front end. And then you yarn deploy your contract and you yarn Vercel your app. And you have a live app at a live URL with a live smart contract all deployed, within 45 minutes or so. All right. How do I check if my contract is deployed on Etherscan? Yeah, just by clicking it right here, I was able to go to the contract's address on Etherscan to see that it's deployed. You'll do the same thing on Sepolia. Yeah, what else? Any more questions? I think I'm handing it off to someone else. Sorry if I took too much time. Sorry if there was too much mansplaining. Definitely not trying to do that here. Trying to do it right. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much
I
for
I
staying.
am not coming to the residency, Lucille. I wish I could, but I have 3 kids at home and I can only go to DevCon for like 4 days. So I'll be at DevCon. Build Guild will be there. We'll be putting on similar workshops, but I won't be in Chiang Mai the days before. But thank you so
Oh
much
yeah,
for having me.
thank you. Austin, could you put Boja as a co-host?
Oh yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes. Here,
yeah.
let me try to just like make you the co-host. I'm gonna make you the host. You are the host.
Oh yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you. Um, yes. Um, make host. Right now you are the host, Boja. It's okay. Could you hear use?